Perfect. We are now recording. So if you're uncomfortable with that, just know, I guess. Over the Edge, we partner with nonprofits all across Canada, the US. We're doing it in Europe now as well to do a rappelling-based fundraiser. And everybody's in kind of different spots in their due diligence or examination period. But to talk about today, we're going to lead with an OTE introduction, and that's just to make sure that everyone's operating on the same page, and it's going to make what John from Cancer League of Colorado has to share make a lot more sense. And then we're going to turn it over to John, and he's going to share his experience. The Cancer League of Colorado has been doing events with Over the Edge they're going into their 9th year now. Collectively, they've raised $2 million, and this is something John will be able to speak to better than I, but they are an entirely volunteer-run organization. So if you're looking at using your board or your volunteer-based in your event planning, which I would strongly recommend, John's going to have a lot of valuable insights for you, and he's going to be our rock star of the day. And then at the end, we'll open it up to a Q&A session. So hopefully you can not only ask your own questions, either to Over the Edge or to John directly, but hopefully you'll also be able to feed off the questions that other groups are asking too. So I do hope it takes a bit of a round table forum, but I'll ask that we submit any questions that we have into the chat box that you'll see. Hopefully that'll keep things a little bit smoother than unmuting everybody and chaos ensuing. So if you think of any questions, please shoot them in the chat box as we're going, and that way you won't forget about them. And then we'll circle back and we'll be able to ask them at the end. So with that said, the first thing I want to cover, I'm a numbers person for anybody who has spent time talking to me already. So to give you some big picture statistics across our events, we've done over 600 of these events now. In fact, I think one of my colleagues did the numbers this morning, and 647 or something like that now. So lots of events, meaning you don't need to recreate the wheel, right? We have it in place for you. You get the benefit of a well-established system while also the benefit of exclusivity from the licensing system that we impose on ourselves. Those events have seen over 45,000 participants, and collectively they've raised over $60 million. So if we do some averages there, we're looking at the average revenue of $117K per event, and that is gross revenue. Then those events, we're also seeing an average of 71 participants now on the second day of the event. So as some folks may already be aware, this is a 2-day event. First day is Media VIP. You get 10 spots for the Media VIP day. That's because it's a half day, and because the nature of the participants is that they have their camera crews doing 100 different shots. There's entourages, there's networking, so on and so forth, right? On the second day, which is really your large open public fundraiser, we're averaging 71 participants. Okay, and there's also an average media valuation of $230,000, as I'm sure most of you, if not, well, all of you, I'm sure know. This event, and probably not any special event that I'm aware of, probably not the cheapest way to raise $1. If you're after the cheapest way to raise $1, it's probably submitting grant applications and soliciting major donors. But that said, we still do special events because they also put us front and center in the community. Branding, fundraising, and media evaluation, which I think $230,000 is significantly above what the majority of events out there would see. If we want to compare those numbers in more recent years, so we can add some context and look at trends, we can look at 2015 versus 2016. And the summary is that the event is growing. We see we're going from 113 events in 2015 to 126 events in 2016. I think in 2017 it's in the area of 140, so that growth is continuing. The number of edgers was up, as is the total amount raised. You can see in 2016 those events brought in the over $14 million. Now, to kind of get into the bread and butter of what I want to talk about today and what will really kind of make everything that John shares, or give some context to what John shares, is the process that you'll go through with Over the Edge. And the first step of this process is applying. And when I say apply, what I'm referring to is temporarily reserving one of the licenses that we've assigned to an area. So every area has a set number of licenses based mostly off of population size and media markets. So if you're interested in learning more about Over the Edge, the first step is to take that license, put it temporarily on hold. It doesn't cost anything. It doesn't commit you to anything. It's designed entirely so you can do your homework, making sure that you're going to have a successful event before you sign up for anything without having to worry about another organization kind of taking that limited opportunity. It also allows us at the time to do homework as well. As everybody here knows, the nonprofit world anywhere is very small and it communicates very, very well. What that means is that we are extremely invested in having successful partners. We don't want to create roadblocks for ourselves in any given market. And when you're in that application period, your due diligence, it's really going to have two different focuses. The first focus is similar to what you would do before taking on any special event. You'd want to look at how many hours does this take? How are those hours distributed? What does the committee structure look like? What relationships should we have in place? Then the second focus of your due diligence should be the building piece, because this event, it simply doesn't happen without a building. All of the fundraising capacity in the world, totally a moot point if we can't get a building to let us use their property as a venue. And there's a couple of different ways that we can do this. One way is Over the Edge's connections. So those 647 events that I mentioned earlier, they mean that we have some relationships with national building partners, hotel chains like Hilton and Hyatt, as well as corporate real estate groups. But there are inherent problems with our relationships, and that's that they exist at the national level, which means a few more pieces of desks for paperwork to pass across, a few more conversations to be had, and that can be a problem because it's going to extend the time it takes to secure a building. And the other problem with our relationships is that they really don't want to talk to us about somebody who's just applied and said, yeah, I'm interested in learning more. They want to talk to us once we have a partner that has done their homework, know that they're set up for success, then they want to figure out who that partner is, right? So what that means for the nonprofit is that you really cannot depend on Over the Edge's building relationships. They can be very helpful, and there's a lot of nonprofits out there that have secured their properties through our relationships, but I wouldn't suggest anybody move forward past the application stage unless they can identify relationships to 2 buildings in their community. And we're not talking about you needing to know a building owner or something like that. If that's what we needed, we would have been out of business a long time ago. So what we can use, however, and what can be a great start to a building relationship is maybe a board member that's a key executive at a company that's a primary tenant of a building. Or maybe you or one of your fundraising peers does an annual gala at a hotel, so you know the property manager there. Or maybe you have relationships to a corporate real estate agent, right? Those are the types of relationships that get conversations started. And what we need from the nonprofit in the building process is to facilitate that introduction, right? We can't pick up the phone and cold call a property and say, hey, who do we talk to about jumping off your roof, right? But if you can use your local relationships to set up that day and time, then we'll use our legal team, technical team, and senior leadership team to negotiate the use of that building, okay? So in the application phase, that's your 2 areas of homework, fundraising capacity and building relationships. If at the end of that homework you say, hey, we're set up for success, and you opt to move forward, you would do so with your first payment. That would be $2,500. There is a partial refund policy attached to that for the first 90 days, because 90 days is the period of time we're budgeting to secure the use of a building. And when 90 days comes, that's when 2 things happen. Your refund policy expires and your second payment is due, okay? So the jump in exposure is pretty big. At that point, your refund policy would be that you could get back 1,000 of your 2,500, meaning on day 90, your total exposure is $1,500. On day 91, once that payment is due, then your exposure is jumping up to a total 11,500 because the refund policy on the 2,500 expired, and your second payment, which is 9,000, is due on the same day. And then the third and final payment of 18,400 is due on the second day of your event, whenever that happens. And we're probably looking at a 8 to 14 month planning period from once you opt to move forward. So that brings us to the grand total of $29,900 over 3 payments. 2 of those payments pre-event equaling $11,500, the remaining $18,400 due on the second day of your event. And if you're 90 days deep and you've secured your building, then the next thing that we need to do is get you insurance. It's not a shocker that whenever people are dangling over the side of a building, there is absolutely an insurance company somewhere that has their hand out. And that's part of what you're buying from us. We provide all key stakeholders with $10 million in coverage. So that means we're indemnifying ourselves for $10 million, we're indemnifying the nonprofit for $10 million, and also the building partner for $10 million as well. Okay. Now, the other piece tied to insurance that you should be aware of is that you do need to carry a general event insurance policy to do an Over the Edge event. And I know everybody already has one because it's legally required for nonprofits to have one. That legal minimum, however, is $1 million in coverage. And we do require our partners to have $2 million in coverage. So just a heads up on that. If you are at that legal minimum of $1 million in coverage, we would require a temporary event rider to up that coverage for the 2 days of this event. Okay. Oh, actually, fun little story tied to the insurance piece. The only injury claim that we've had after those 49,000 plus participants, allergic reaction to a bee sting. So as far as safety goes, I challenge any 5K, 10K that's been around for the number of years that we have had, the number of participants that we had, to show a safety record like that. Once we have done our homework, found out if it's a good idea, if so, move forward with that payment, secured the building, then at the 90th day made our second payment, got everybody insurance. At that point, it's time to start planning for your event. And we've got a few support structures for you in place at Over the Edge. The first one, and the biggest one, I would say, is going to be our client experience team. Okay, so we have a team of client experience managers, and the reason they have jobs are to make sure that your event is going to be successful. And what their job is really, they're kind of the coach, if you will. They'll take that playbook of 1,001 things that have been successfully executed with this event, and they know how it's done and when it's done and timelines and associated verbiage and sample materials. All of that's in place for you, but it's limited to strategy, best practices, samples, and yeah, that kind of conversational coaching and sending out resources. That is to say that the implementation of all of the strategic plans that you create with your client experience manager, that falls to the nonprofit. Okay, so you guys are the ones getting out there, banging on doors, recruiting participants, engaging with those participants once they've been recruited. This is a peer-to-peer fundraising event, so that is a huge part of your success. It also falls to the nonprofit to get in front of the media, but once again, that media outreach is part of the strategy that you'll get from Over the Edge, and you can certainly lean on your client experience manager for samples of press releases and how-tos and timelines. That's all there. But getting out and doing it, that comes down to the nonprofit. Okay. The second support structure that we have in place for you is Over the Edge University. And this is a series of webinars that focuses on specific elements of the event, whereas the client experience manager is going to be that big picture view across all of the events, very in-depth analysis, not in-depth analysis, broad, big picture. And then it's Over the Edge University, which is the in-depth analysis, and that has more targeted focuses specific to marketing or recruitment or cost savings or whatever an element is that we feel merits a little bit of extra attention and perspective. And then the third support structure for you in that event planning process is the members area of our website, where all of the tangible documents that you would get from us reside. So that would be your legal documents like credit card guarantee forms, participant waivers, your frameworks for strategic plans, sample materials, recorded sessions of Over the Edge University are also found there, raw building blocks for your marketing materials like high-res images, B-roll footage, that nature. And then once we've spent maybe 4 to 6 months of kind of committee planning around that, then we'll be coming up to your event time. And as I mentioned earlier, it is a 2-day event. The first day being all about media and VIP. And again, it's 10 participants, and that rappelling component of that day actually happens in the second half of the day. The morning is spent rigging the building. And just to be clear, when I say media personalities, I'm really less interested in, say, the 5 o'clock TV reporter than, say, the radio jockey, right? The 5 o'clock TV reporter is, yeah, sure, they'll give you some exposure. Everyone knows them, loves them. That's all good. But that exposure would probably be limited to 45 to a minute worth of airtime, and it's probably going to be the night before your big event. So from a revenue perspective, rather meaningless. Right? But when you can use personalities that get you exposure in advance of your event by weeks or months, like breakfast television, daytime talk show, radio jockeys, it provides you that exposure early enough to use as a recruitment tool. It's much more mission focused as well, and then you get the follow-up exposure when they come to do they do the follow-up story on the first day of your event. That's a glimpse at the media strategy there, and then the VIP portion is a little bit more flexible, nonprofit to nonprofit, based on what you're trying to accomplish. We have groups that pursue legislative change, for example. So they're all about the state senator and the governor and the mayor. We have other groups that are big into the Benavon model. So they're about using this as a bit of a friend raiser and bringing people into the door, giving them an experience they can't forget, and fostering that relationship. Other groups focus on the media and the exposure component, so they enjoy, local celebrities or sports mascots, whatever that may be. And then the second day of your event is that fundraising day where the participants bring their friends and family. They do the rappel. Maybe you've invited the food trucks or have somebody with a megaphone kind of giving the bios of your participants, something to engage the crowd, that sort of thing. And as far as number of participants go on that second day, it's not huge. We want to take a quality over quantity approach every single time. And using the average numbers, if we look at that, 71 participants on average for that second day, and that 117 average revenue, that's a really large gap if the nonprofit's requiring their participants to raise $1,000 a head, which is what most land on. So to fill that gap, you have two factors. Number one is, of course, the sponsorship angle. You'll have some of that. But very importantly to the success is also the ability to incentivize participants to go above and beyond the minimum that they've committed to raising. And a big part of making that possible is the demographic that you recruit. It should be folks that are, they're excited to rappel down a building. That's a piece of it for sure. But the bigger piece there is using the nature of this event to get in front of people and new audiences. But once you're in front of those new audiences, it's really more about connecting them to who you are as an organization, what you're about, the results that you're seeing, and then, if you want to support these results, we just happen to have this exciting bucket list exclusive fundraising event. And that's the 2 days of the event itself. And step 6 is next year. This event is designed to be an annual signature event. And that's how most of our clients use it. And if that's how you're intending to use it, the recruitment for your next year begins at your first event, right? You want to use that momentum, maybe offer some kind of incentive, waiving a registration fee for people who sign up that day or who volunteer as team captains or whatever that may be. You know, you're creating lead lists from the people that are just kind of stopping on the street. Hey, what's this about? You know, getting the emails and sending them out follow-ups and that sort of thing. Celebrating your participants to increase their retention. It's all the best recruitment tool for this event, I would say probably is this event. But I will let John speak to that and much more so you can hear directly from another nonprofit. So if it works for you, John, I'm going to turn the show over to you at this point.
Perfect. Thanks, Neil. You can hear me okay?
Loud and clear.
Perfect. All right, everyone. Thanks for joining us. My name is John Snow. I am an attorney by day and a co-chair of the Cancer League of Colorado's Over the Edge event. Neil shared some of the stats that we're very proud of. We've raised over $2 million using the Over the Edge fundraiser. We have an organization that we think has a unique opportunity. We are 100% volunteer, meaning everybody, myself, that we have no paid staff, no overhead, nothing. What we do then is we have a membership that underwrites our events through annual dues. So the result is we can tell people, you raise $1,000, there's $1,000 going to cancer research. And I think it gives us an ability to tap in. And unfortunately, cancer is not something that's hard to tap into. I mean, everybody's got a story, and we encourage people to share those stories as they seek fundraising. I mean, last year alone, I had one repeller who had signed up, was all excited, actually diagnosed with cancer 2 days before the event, and repelled. I had another repeller that repelled after they came straight from their first treatment of chemo. And we worked very hard to get those stories in front of not only our membership but in front of the media and to use this fundraiser to really grow awareness. There'll be plenty of time for questions at the end. What I really want to focus on, and it's going to sound a little bit like a broken record, but we have been able to build this. This year I'll have probably 225 repellers over 2.5 days, 3 ropes running. We've been able to build this because we have focused on our relationships, and we have a phenomenal relationship with the South Denver Metro Fire Department, which handles all of our rope volunteers. They're all skilled repellers themselves as being firefighters. They take that burden off my shoulder and they just run with it. They figured out a way to get even continuing education credits for their volunteers, and they dump in, gosh, 40 or 50 volunteers over the 2 days that help us out. And predominantly, which is interesting, our demographic is about 80% female repellers. And so my big burly firemen do help with the process. We have had only one person in our 8 years get to the rooftop and decide not to rappel, which is a big factor. That relationship, as well as the relationship with the building, we were lucky enough, Neil talked about this, we were lucky enough to have a major supporter of the Cancer League as a building owner. A 32-story apartment building in downtown Denver that they had remodeled, that sat vacant during the downturn, that they purchased and remodeled into apartments, and they've been a great partner for us. And so it's those two partnerships that have make this very manageable for us as a group, and let us focus on the fundraising component, which is really, nobody likes asking people for money. I get that, but when you've got a cause that you believe in, be it cancer, be it whatever, fighting cancer being the cause, excuse me, that you believe in, raising the money is kind of an easier, it gets easier over time. The one thing that I think the Cancer League and myself in particular have not done a good job at, and that is using the resources that Over the Edge provides. I was even making some notes here at the beginning, going, geez, I didn't know that was available. I didn't know this was available. So I really would encourage groups. And the other real bit of advice that I would focus on is, if you're going to do it, I really would commit to a couple years, because it does build some steam. I mean, we're talking now about our 10th year coming up. We're doing the 9th this year, but our 10th year, I've probably got 20 rappellers that have rappelled every single year, and so we're thinking of doing something special for my 10-year rappellers. And it really has kind of gained steam. I mean, we raised last year on 225 rappellers. We raised $304,000, which was one of our better years. But we've always kind of been in that 200 to 300 range. This year, our target is actually 500. So it's a big jump. But use the resources that Over the Edge has for you. As far as the way we structure it, since our whole organization is volunteer, we really have to have clearly defined roles. And what I do is we have lots of great volunteers from our organization, but unless you have somebody directing, it can get a little chaotic. And so we have three basic event people, and we have a rooftop person, as I call the roof boss, who is in charge, who's just making sure the schedule goes up there and can answer any questions, and is taking care of all my rope volunteers that are up there, the firefighters, plus all the Over the Edge staff. We're making sure lunch arrives on time, the whole 9 yards. We then have the deck boss, which is the person with the megaphone that's down greeting everybody and announcing who's rappelling. And then, I guess I call myself the rappel boss, and I'm working with getting people in the door up to staging, kind of getting them severed from their friends and family so that we can get them harnessed up and ready to go, and keeping the flow of the event moving. But really well-defined roles is, an event is going to be a little chaotic no matter how well you are prepared. There's just a lot of things that go on, and God forbid you get a little bit of weather or something like that delays you. People don't maybe show up on time or whatever. But if you have enough volunteers and enough people to answer the questions, you can give the appearance of not being disorganized or confused when in fact, reality is that some of it's just unavoidable. I guess at this point, I mean, if there's some questions, or I could talk a little bit about in more detail, Neil, about how we structure it, how often, we have, for instance, guys, we have a committee of about 35 people that we meet, any semblance of that 35 or so that meets about every month right now. May 30th is our 100 days out from our event, where things really start to ramp up. I guess I could give you a couple statistics about our event that I find unique. Last year, in raising the 300,000, my top 10 rappellers raised half of that money, which kind of shows you that VIP. How do you make certain you're taking care of the people that are really taking care of you? My top fundraiser last year raised $45,000 on her own. She's a 40-year-old breast cancer survivor who has committed she couldn't rappel the first year we did this. Many people rappelled in her honor because she was in the middle of chemo, and from that day forward, she's committed to support us. She actually lives in Beverly Hills and flies to Denver just to do the event. But we've given her awards. We've made certain that she feels appreciated, and really being thankful to your rappellers that come out year after year is a very big part of what we do. We have parties in the evenings on both the Thursday and the Friday night, just kind of as a thank you, as a get together, and kind of build the organization and build the excitement for the event. Right now, we have about 60 rappellers signed up for our September event. Many of my rappellers wait till the last minute just to make my life a little more interesting, but we will start to do the fundraising in earnest here now. So Neil, is there anything else I missed? You want me to cover, or?
Yeah, not whatever you feel is most valuable to you, lessons, challenges, that sort of thing. I love where you were going with the committee piece. I think that's where you have a lot of insight to add with being a completely volunteer-run group. So I think I might be speaking for some people in the audience when I say, can you talk a little bit more about, what are those 35 people doing? Is there subcommittees? What are those defined roles?
Yeah, the sponsorship, the people who go out and seek sponsorships are really myself, my co-chair, and a few select other people that are in touch with the leadership of our organization. Because the last thing any organization wants to do is go stumbling into a meeting asking a company for a bunch of money when last week they cut a check for one of your other events. Okay, so we try to kind of localize that fundraising so that we don't step on any toes and hurt any feelings. But the rest of the group, I've got 3 or 4 people that are just doing my social media. I've got 3 or 4 people that are out, trying to get teams put together in various industries. We were very successful in getting into the real estate business, given the need for, lack of a better word, kind of self-promotion. This event teamed up well, and we actually got different brokerages to friendly compete against each other on teams and raising money. And so we have people focusing on teams. We obviously have people focusing on those parties that we talked about, and then focusing on the website and fundraising, and then communication with prior year members. We use a website through a Denver company called Black Tie that they created for us many years ago. Some other events across the country have used the software. It's inexpensive, which is good for us. It does a good enough job. Like any technology, we all can think of better ways it could work, but it does allow us to maintain quite a bit of data on our past rappellers, and to use that information year over year to stay stay in contact with those people. So I'm not saying all 35 people show up to the meetings. In fact, my last meeting I had like 7 people, but we just work through the issues that we can, and it's very much a kind of delegated structure where I've got a couple of people working on these parties, and I just say, here's kind of the budget we're looking at, and anything you can negotiate. And so they're going to their favorite bar or restaurant and saying, hey, is there a Wednesday night where you could host us? And and so they're out doing that, while meanwhile we're all still pushing on sponsorships. I mean, sponsorships are what turn an event, can really turn the financials of an event. If you've got 200 rappellers and they all raise their $1,000, well, you're at 200. But if you can get a couple sponsors in that 30 or 40 range, that can really add up quickly. So another thing we've been successful with is just reaching out to a company and saying, hey, how about you send us 10 rappellers, for $10,000, just at one time, just a check. You send us 10 employees, make it the afternoon of your if you got a corporate meeting, you're bringing people in town, a corporate meeting, this could be the afternoon activity or something like that. And that's been successful for a couple groups. So when it comes to the fundraising, it just, anything really goes. I'm always hesitant to create a sponsorship packet every year because, if you have to put a price on it, and I put on my lead price on my lead sponsor, I put 35,000. But I do it for 25 if they, or I do it for less if we could do other kind of exposure. I mean, many companies have intercompany newsletters and things like that, and if you can get exposure into those, and I mean, there's all kinds of things. So when I talk about sponsorships, my main key is to be as flexible as possible, really, and listen to the, present sponsors, but ask them what they would want out of it. I mean, are they trying to drive traffic to a new website? Well, then maybe maybe every picture that we take gets posted to their Facebook, or Rappellers hold a sign with the company's name on it, or something that just gives a little bit more exposure that helps them meet their goals. So I would leave nothing off the table when it comes to dealing with sponsorships.
Awesome. Thanks, John. And
yeah.
Like you mentioned earlier, I think when you run that simple math of 71 heads or 200 heads,
Mm-hmm.
whatever it is, at $1,000 a head, the two components that you add to that are both the sponsorships, which you just spoke to, and also the ability to get folks to raise above and beyond the minimum as well, which you really illustrated well. And please correct me if I'm re-quoting this information wrong. I believe you said your top 10 participants raised 50% of your peer-to-peer dollars. Is that right? Can you speak to that?
Yeah, my top 10 Rappellers last year raised $150,000, which with my top Rappeller raising 40, so the next 9 raised 100. But yeah, so it was. We had 1 year we had two gentlemen that were coming back from, I'll just call it a rather. It appeared to be a long lunch, but they were sober, but they had their chest out and they were ready, and they wrote me a check on the spot for $10,000 if they could cut in line and go to the top and rappel. And we put them through all the protocol, and they got to the top and they got the okay, and they rappelled down, and everybody cheered them on, and we made $10,000 just like that.
That's the dream. Love it.
Yeah. No.
One of the, well, I have not seen anybody submit any questions through the chat yet, so please muster your courage and start preparing your questions as I say this. We did have one group that wasn't able to attend today, but they know we'll be recording this and sending it out following, and they wanted me to pose the public question publicly in case it got other folks thinking as well. What are some pitfalls that groups have fallen into in the past that they think they could avoid in the future? So I'll mention 3 common ones that groups across the country have kind of fallen into, and then John, please feel free to add insights as to if you have any personal experiences with this happening to your event. So the first one is that I always say focus on your mission, right? And I mentioned this very briefly, that there's a sense of, oh, this event is really different and it's unique and it's exclusive, and therefore we're gonna tell everybody how cool it is to rappel down a building, and that's what's gonna get people to sign up and raise a lot of money. And I think that is half true. I think that will get a lot of people to sign up, but I also think it will cause a lot of headache down the road, because when you connect people solely to the idea of rappelling down a building, you may get a lot of people sign up, but then weeks or months later, they may not have even really started their fundraising. And if they did start their fundraising, they might ask the friends and family in their close circle, for the 20, 30, 40 bucks, whatever, and then they might get 40, 50, 60% of the way to their minimum goal or minimum commitment, and then they run out of people that they are comfortable talking to. And so they may not reach that minimum if they're not going to step outside of their comfort zone. And they're less likely to do that if they only are doing this to rappel down a building. And even if they do reach that minimum, if they're only doing it to rappel down a building, you're not going to be able to incentivize them above and beyond that, right? So use the nature of the event to get in front of groups, but once you're in front of them, I would suggest that you're really looking for that subsect of people that, yep, they're excited to rappel down a building, but they care about your mission. And I do distinguish between mission and organization. So that's one. The second one, and this is possibly easier said than done, but it is, we know the nature of special events and fundraising, and you have to deal with what's on your plate at any given time, and we've got grant deadlines and all of that, but it's really dangerous to delay the implementation of your strategic plans by too much. Even if it seems like you're struggling to keep your mouth or head above water, if you don't start your recruitment and engagement of those participants at least 4, I would probably even suggest 5 months pre-event, that's going to be tough. And you want to leave your participants enough time to raise the money that they've committed to raising. There is, yeah, you can absolutely have credit card guarantee forms which allow them to extend their fundraising beyond the event day. But if you are leaving your recruitment for a month before the event and you tell somebody they have to raise $1,000 in a month, they're not hearing credit card guarantee form. They're hearing $1,000 in a month, right? So give them lots of time. Recruit them early. It's less scary. Engage with them regularly and connect them with your mission so that they're more likely to step outside of their comfort zone, reach that minimum, and definitely a larger group of them will be willing to exceed that minimum if you've got some incentive levels for them. My third one, and then I'm turning it over to John, is have a registration fee. I've talked to some groups that they're hesitant to implement a registration fee because they think it will drive participants off. There might be some truth to that, but I would argue if you're driving people off because they have to put 50 or even $100 of their own money towards this, then they're probably the type of participant that you're okay driving away because they're probably the folks that are going to cause more headaches and raise the least money anyway. And just because you have a registration fee of $50 or $100 or whatever it is, doesn't mean that's what people actually need to pay. You're giving yourself a tool for down the road where you can say, this week only, 50% off registration, or recruit a friend and waive your registration. And if you have those registration fees counting towards your participants' minimums anyway, you don't care. You're getting the money one way or another, but you're still adding value and driving urgency. So to recap, I would say focus on the mission, start your the lead time of your recruitment and marketing 4 to 5 months pre-event, and have a registration fee. John, what are your sense there? Comments on those or any of your own?
Yeah, no, those are all good. Those are very good. We had one year where we did the registration at a bar, and we got a bunch of people to sign up, and about 60% of those just caused us headaches because they never did anything else, but we still had them on our rappel schedule, and we still had, it just created a lot of issues. So I think targeting your people is very, very important. Targeting the group that, of course, we're lucky enough that we do have a rather affluent group often involved, but it makes my life harder because a lot of them just bring their $1,000 check the day of and just pay it and move on, and I'm worrying the whole time, are they coming, are they not coming? This year we're doing something that I came up with that since May 30th is 100 days from our event, we're giving away, we're raffling off an Apple Watch to all participants who are signed up by May 30th will be entered into a raffle. And I quickly got a sponsor. I just said, hey, to a friend, hey, you guys throw this watch in. If on every email, I'm going to send out, email blast to about 2,000 people, past propellers, volunteers. Will you sponsor it? And they said no problem. We dropped their logo on it, and away we've gone. It's been pretty easy. And at this time last year, I had maybe 10 rappellers signed up, and like I said, my computer just dinged at me now. I just saw another person signed up, so we're probably somewhere close to 60 signed up now. The registration fee is a big point. We have a lot of talks about the registration fee. I mean, if it was up to me, I'd move it to $250. And because, to your point, I'm not certain I want anybody that is truly worried about the $1,000. Because someone who raises $1,000 is good for a placeholder, but but doesn't do really anything, doesn't really add to the big picture. So what we tell people is, hey, it's a minimum of 1,000 to rappel, but most people raise 2,500 or more. And that's what we try to focus on, and to get people thinking about their number. Constantly pushing that number up. I mean, we've been charging $1,000 for a rappel for 9 years, which I think at some point we're going to have to say that number needs to increase. But a lot of people have fear of that number and don't realize how easy it is to get to that number. And we're trying to work on ways to show people how easy it is to get to that number in many cases. But it takes some work, and it takes the ability to, to contact people. And I think that's where the story and the mission helps us so much, because I encourage all of my rappellers, they can go onto our website, they can register, and then they can tell a little story. I'm rappelling because I lost my grandmother to cancer, because I believe, cancer research saved me, or I'm a breast cancer survivor, whatever. And then that page can be linked and sent out to people with the Donate Here tab. So they can send an email, hey everybody, take a look at this. They click on the link, up comes the website explaining exactly why they're rappelling, with a Donate Now button right next to it.
Yep.
So that's, connecting those two things are really important.
Awesome.
Connecting the cause, whatever it is, and getting people to put their money up.
All right. We thank you. We've had a few questions come in, so please, folks, keep them coming. I think we've got about a little bit over 10 minutes left here, so we probably have time for a couple more if you want to get them in. I'm going to jump to the end of the queue for a second, actually. There's 2 questions from the same individual. What is the average registration fee per participant? Over all of the events, I actually don't have a stat that I can be rock solid on you and say this is what the average works out to be. But I would typically say 50 or 100 would I wouldn't go lower than those numbers. And again, keeping in mind that you'll be discounting or waiving as part of your call to actions, if you will.
Last year we had, I went back and looked at, we had $3,800 that we raised from people that did not meet their goal and did not rappel.
There you go.
So there's some money that can be counted there.
From the same individual that asks about the registration fee, they also ask, has the Cancer League involved junior high and high school groups in this event? If so, how?
We have not. We have involved. We have had a couple major donors allow their have their granddaughter go. Last year, my second biggest rappeller, raising just under $15,000, was a sophomore in high school that did it. Keep in mind there is the 100-pound minimum weight requirement to rappel. So we haven't necessarily focused on kids. We have been looking this year at potentially having a 3-story rappel on site, something for other people to do that don't want to do the full rappel, but we've obviously got some nerves about whether that cannibalizes the $1,000 rappel and what do you charge and all that stuff. But we've not involved junior high students.
And I'll add a couple of my own points on the junior high students question. Number one, I think, as John mentioned earlier, it's all about relationships. And that's why with your client experience manager, you're taking the 1,001 things and boiling it down to a proverbial 101 things, right? So it's not this worked well for somebody else, therefore it will work well for me. It's about how do I use my relationships. So if you don't have relationships to junior high entities, probably not a great demographic for you to pursue. If you do have relationships there, and if that is part of your focus, you should use those relationships, but we do want to be cautious about that particular demographic because a junior high student is unlikely to have the same peer and support networks as an established professional, right? And that means something for their fundraising, right? So when we're looking for, junior high groups or even college groups, really, I would say groups are your friends rather than individuals. And if you go for individuals, then probably more of a toss your teacher type campaign than a individual student doing the fundraising. Anything else you want to add there, John?
No, that's exactly right. I mean, people that raise $1,000 are great and they fill seats, but when you get second and third year of your event, you now want all those seats filled with 2,500. I mean, that's the best way to grow.
Excellent. Another question here. I think that's you, John, mentioned that he has some of his repellers year on year on year, but where does he recruit his new participants from?
We do a lot of word of mouth through our big committee group, working with companies. We've been successful we will target 3 or 4 companies and we'll do the old, hey, just come out, it repels on me, have a good time, see our event, and then we'll talk about next year. And that's been successful. I had one group we did that for. They're going to have, I think, 16 repellers this year alone. So that really word of mouth is how we've done it. This year I did have some nice posters printed up, and I had a volunteer go to every firehouse, every gym that would let us put up a poster. I think I printed 250 posters, and those have all been scattered about, and I've had quite a few responses from those. So word of mouth and putting some posters out, kind of just sweat equity, has been the best way to do it for us.
Yeah. I'd really echo that sentiment of word of mouth. I mean, and this ties back to connecting people with mission rather than with how cool it is to rappel off a building. The most successful recruitment tools, what we see big picture, I won't speak specifically for John here, but it sounds like this is in line, person to, like, face-to-face, mission-focused asks from a pre-existing relationship, right? That's got the trust, that's got the connection to the mission, and it's got a sense of camaraderie, if you will.
And I'll add to that, they're also often easier people to deal with when the event comes. I mean, It's not, they know that you know somebody that they know, type of thing. Whereas when it's just somebody off the street, things can get, I want to go on this rope, and I was told I was going to rappel at this time, and it can get kind of trying at times. But when you're in that kind of peer group, everybody's there, there's a focus. Everybody's on the same kind of page.
Okay, great. We have one more question here, and following this, we'll probably have time for one more. So if you have a question you've been sitting on, enter it now. It's probably the last one we'll have a chance to address. But this question that just came in says, when recruiting radio hosts and other media reps to support the event, what has John and his group found to be good first steps? How do you make that outreach, I guess?
We have gone directly to, we've done cold calling. Actually, with a lot of that group, there's one prominent radio host here in Denver by the name of Murphy Houston, who's been on the radio for probably 40-some years. He is a cancer survivor, and so we kind of got him in, and then he shared his contact list, and we, I had my 62-year-old co-chair and law partner, Jim Hackstaff, on Denver's death metal radio station plugging this last year, because that was one of the groups that responded to us and said, yeah, we'd love to do it. And now they've done it 3 years in a row, and they'll do a couple segments for us where we call in, and they'll talk up the event. And but yeah, it's really been finding that one contact and then kind of working our way through them.
Excellent. And no other questions have come in since that, and we're coming up to the end of our time here. So unless there's anything else that you personally want to add, John, I think I'll thank you very much for your time, and also everybody else for joining us and sharing their time.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you kindly. All right, everybody, have a wonderful remainder of your day, and please feel free to reach out. We will be sending out a recording, but if you think of anything later, you know how to find me and or my colleague that you've been communicating with. All right, thanks, and have a good day. Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye.